The letter arrived without warning, delivered by hand in a black envelope bearing the Harrow family crest. Natalie hadn't seen it in years, not since her name had become synonymous with scandal. The paper was thick, formal, scented faintly with her mother's signature gardenia perfume. A gala invitation. 10 years of silence. 6 since the accusations. 3 since the press labeled her a pariah and the world moved on without her. Now, suddenly, the family wanted her back. A celebration of legacy, it said. Her father's retirement. A public reconciliation. Peace, they promised. Natalie stared at the gold-embossed lettering while the news scrolled across her muted TV screen. New evidence reopens Harrow Foundation embezzlement probe. Suspicion once again falls on Natalie Harrow. She didn't remember committing the crime. She didn't remember much of anything from that year. But one thing was clear, someone did. And they were preparing to finish what they started. The Harrow estate hadn't changed. It still perched like a crown above the bluffs of Merrick Sound, every angle calculated to impress, every shadow sculpted to hide. As the town car curved up the long gravel drive, Natalie Harrow stared out the window, resisting the reflex to touch her neck, where the familiar weight of her grandmother's locket no longer hung. She had sold it, along with most of her past, piece by piece in the years after the fall. Beyond the glass, the mansion appeared like something from a fever dream. Turrets like stone sentinels. Ivy clinging to the brick like desperate fingers. The house always gave her the feeling of being watched. It had been 10 years since she'd stood on this driveway, escorted out by lawyers and security, her reputation shattering behind her like glass. She hadn't planned to return. But when the invitation arrived, the gala, the foundation, her father's legacy, they said, Natalie knew it wasn't just about closure. It was bait. The driver opened her door. As she stepped out, her heels sank slightly into the gravel, an almost imperceptible resistance, like the earth remembered her and wasn't ready to forgive. Inside the foyer, a hollow echo welcomed her. The Harrow home was colder than she remembered, as if the heating had been intentionally dialed down. Marble floors stretched in all directions. Paintings of long-dead ancestors watched her pass, their eyes painted with judgment. A butler she didn't recognize escorted her to the main hall. "They're expecting you in the parlor," he said without inflection. His face was blank, but Natalie caught the micro-expression, disdain or pity, she couldn't decide. The parlor had been redecorated. Warmer tones, softer lighting. The room tried to appear inviting, but everything inside it screamed control. Her mother, Margot Harrow, sat by the fireplace in a silk cream suit that matched the bone-white wine in her hand. Her eyes met Natalie's without warmth. "You're early," Margot said, not rising. Natalie paused at the threshold. Traffic was kind. Her mother waved a manicured hand. "We never moved your things," she said, like it was a gift. "Your room is just as you left it." Natalie didn't respond. She knew the room would be immaculate, scrubbed of emotion, staged like a crime scene where the body had never been found. Alexis appeared in the doorway behind her. Sleek. Efficient. Her blonde hair pulled into the same tight knot she'd worn since grad school. She looked like a successful executive, not the former college dropout who once stole Natalie's car and crashed it into a senator's garden. "You're really here," Alexis said. Her voice was light, but her eyes were scanning for weakness. "We weren't sure you'd come." Natalie offered a thin smile. "Neither was I." They led her upstairs without ceremony. The hall stretched unnaturally long, the way they always did in dreams. Family photographs lined the corridor, each one a revisionist masterpiece. Daniel was still in some of them, forever 25, his smile caught mid-laughter. But Natalie noticed the subtle rearrangement. In the larger portraits, he had been quietly removed. Her room was exactly as expected. Immaculate. Cold. Her childhood bed made with surgical precision, the quilt ironed flat. Books on the shelf alphabetized. No dust, no disarray. But something was off. She walked to the bookshelf and pulled down a worn copy of The Bell Jar. Inside was a folded note. One she recognized. Daniel's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I didn't do it." For years had passed since Daniel's supposed suicide. Pills. A hotel bathtub. But Natalie had never believed it. He was the only one who still spoke to her after the scandal broke. The only one who asked questions instead of issuing commands. And now this note, hidden in plain sight. What else had been hidden? She slipped it into her coat pocket and sat on the edge of the bed. The walls felt closer than they should be. The silence had weight. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. New evidence emerges in Harrow Foundation fraud case. Sources point to Natalie Harrow as central figure in expanding investigation. Her pulse spiked. Coincidence? Impossible. The timing was surgical. She stood, scanning the corners of the ceiling. Cameras? Mics? Were they monitoring her already? Natalie pulled her suitcase under the bed, unzipped it, and removed a small black pouch. Inside, a burner phone, a notebook, and 3 USB drives. She had come prepared to gather evidence, just not this soon. She opened her notebook and scribbled a single line under today's date. They still think I'm easy to disappear. Later that evening, dinner was served in the East Wing, where floor-length windows overlooked the sea. The long mahogany table was set for 8, but only 4 chairs were occupied. Wallace Harrow sat at the head, grayer, thinner, but with the same iron spine. He greeted her with a nod, as if she were a colleague returning from unpaid leave. Alexis chatted about the Foundation's progress, about donors, about legacy. Her voice rose and fell with polished charm, but her fingers drummed a quiet pattern on the table's edge. A tell. She was nervous. Margot didn't eat. She picked at her plate like the food offended her. Natalie noticed the staff were different, younger, silent, new. No one who had served here during the scandal. Wallace lifted his glass. To family, he said, and to healing old wounds. Natalie didn't raise her glass. Instead, she watched them. Her family. The architects of silence. They wanted her here for a reason, and it wasn't reconciliation. Upstairs, in her old room, the note from Daniel waited. A key to something bigger. And outside, beyond the windows, the ocean whispered secrets to anyone willing to listen. The storm arrived in silence. Not a thunderclap or lightning strike, but a sleek envelope slid under her bedroom door before dawn. Natalie had been awake for hours, her mind tracing old blueprints of betrayal. She rose, pattered across the floor, and picked it up without a word. Inside, photocopied documents. Old bank statements. Wire transfers. Emails between executives of the Harrow Foundation and her. Or rather, someone pretending to be her. The signature was hers, yes. The tone, close enough to pass. But the details were wrong. She had never approved a transfer to the Cayman account listed. She had never sent money to any consultant in Zurich. At the bottom, a post-it note, written in a hand she didn't recognize. Check the media tomorrow. You'll be famous again. She didn't react. She simply opened the drawer of her bedside table and placed the envelope inside, on top of Daniel's note. Then she opened her laptop, turned off the Wi-Fi, and pulled up her mirror drive, a hidden partition she'd built during her years of freelancing under pseudonyms. Everything was backed up there. Every message, every photo, every call log she had kept before the scandal. She began to cross-reference. The email timestamp was during her stay at West Bay Clinic, a time she barely remembered. Medication haze. Therapy. Her mother called it a rest cure. The staff called it stabilization. That was when they did it. The planted correspondence continued to emerge. Another leak hit the news by midday. Natalie sat in the library, the same room where her father used to dictate holiday speeches, and watched the segment play out on the flat screen bolted to the wall. New revelations deepen Harrow Foundation probe. Leaked communications suggest Natalie Harrow acted as financial proxy in illegal offshore transfers. The panel of experts nodded solemnly. One former FBI agent called it a textbook example of privilege laundering. A body language specialist commented on an old video clip of Natalie leaving a courtroom, pointing out how guilt radiated from her posture. She watched herself, pixelated and overexposed, walking out of the courthouse from 6 years ago. Her face pale, her jaw clenched. She remembered the cold that day, the metallic taste in her mouth. The lawyer beside her had offered to hold her arm for balance. She declined. Sources close to the family have yet to comment, the anchor concluded. But the silence itself is being interpreted as confirmation. Natalie closed the screen. Later that evening, she went walking. Not to escape, but to listen. The estate grounds sprawled into woods on the northern edge, a thicket of wild holly and birch trees her brother had once called their escape hatch. As children, they used to bury coins and fake treasure maps in jars here, hoping to forget the rules of the house just long enough to remember they were siblings, not heirs. She knelt near one of their old spots. The soil was soft from a recent rain. Her fingers brushed against something hard. Glass. A mason jar. Inside, a USB stick, sealed tight. Her pulse jumped. Back in her room, she plugged it into the burner laptop. No password. Just a folder titled WYRD. Within it, 3 videos. Grainy, but clear enough. The first, footage of her sister Alexis speaking to an accountant about erasing inconvenient assets. She uses Natalie's name twice. She laughs. The second, her mother, Margot, sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of white wine, telling someone off camera, "It's sad, really. She always wanted to belong. If she had just taken the fall like we planned, none of this would have been necessary." The third, silence for a long moment. Then her father's voice, disembodied, as if caught from a distance, asterisk, "When the police close the file, make sure she gets the invitation. She won't resist. She never does." Natalie leaned back. There it was. The setup, not just the framing, the full arc. She had been the firebreak, the chosen sacrifice. And now, she had the matches. She opened her notebook and wrote 3 names. Then she circled each. Then she drew a line beneath them and wrote. Daniel knew, and they silenced him. That night, she did not sleep. She watched the rain blur the view beyond the bay window as shadows swayed in the trees. Somewhere, buried beneath the floorboards of this house, the truth was still breathing. Tomorrow, she would give it a voice. The next day, Natalie moved with calculated precision. She began in the attic, dusting off boxes marked as Daniel's storage. Among the debris of adolescence, old notebooks, photography prints, awards engraved with the Harrow name, she found a small, locked case. She remembered it from childhood. A puzzle box Daniel once said held the answers to everything. The mechanism was simple, almost laughably so. She rotated the dials, 1-9-8-7, the year of their birth. Click. Inside, more USB drives. Physical photos. A burner phone. A printed page with timestamps and IP addresses. It was a forensic trail, perfectly preserved. Daniel had compiled it and hidden it, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of love. She spent hours scanning everything, piecing together the digital timeline. The email evidence, the bank transfers, the fake consultancy accounts, it was all fabricated during her stay in the clinic. Meanwhile, public opinion had been sculpted, slowly and methodically, to ensure that when the next scandal hit, Natalie would already be the villain. She opened one video labeled 12 days before. Daniel spoke directly into the camera. He looked tired, but lucid. "If you're watching this, it means they used her. And it means they used me too. They're planning something big. I think I can stall them, but I won't be able to stop it. Not without help." He hesitated, blinked. "You were always better at this than me, Nat. If you can find this, finish it." The feed cut out. Her breath caught. Her chest ached. The ache turned to fire. She knew what she had to do. That evening, she made calls. Quiet ones. A former colleague. A journalist who owed her a favor. A cybersecurity analyst who had helped her once disappear from the internet for 6 months. They didn't ask questions. They heard the edge in her voice and gave her what she needed. By midnight, she had rerouted the footage. It would stream from a cloud server if her phone went offline. The files would be backed up in triplicate. Her presence at the gala would not just be symbolic. It would be tactical. She returned to her room and lay down without undressing. Her eyes traced the ceiling. In this house of power and polish, the truth had been hidden in boxes and buried in jars. But it still had weight. And now, she was ready to throw it. The morning of the gala dawned golden and deceptive. Sunlight sliced through the clouds and bathed the Harrow estate in a warmth that felt rehearsed, artificial, like a spotlight on a stage. Every hallway had been scrubbed, every surface buffed to a gleam. Natalie walked through the estate like a ghost in reverse, not unseen, but unwilling to be recognized. Downstairs, floral arrangements bloomed in strategic clusters, imported orchids and lilies filling the air with a scent too rich to be comforting. Event staff darted around in black, whispering instructions and adjusting seating charts. Somewhere near the ballroom, she heard music being tuned, a string quartet rehearsing something grand and hollow. Waiters practiced their routes with polished trays, moving like ghosts through a carefully orchestrated dream. She stayed out of sight. Natalie moved through the service corridors she and Daniel had used to escape family dinners when they were children. That morning, she used them to descend into the basement, the one area of the house rarely touched. It still smelled of mildew and forgotten ambition. Here, generations of Harrow memorabilia were boxed, cataloged, or simply discarded. Here, secrets didn't fade. They fermented. In a far corner of the archive room, Natalie found a false wall. Daniel had marked it once with chalk, a tiny rune, no bigger than a thumbnail. Behind it, another locked box. This one metal. Inside, a drone. Small, military grade. She remembered it vaguely. Daniel had shown her once, proud of its precision. He had used it for photography, surveillance, curiosity. What she didn't know then was that he used it on their family. The memory card inside had one folder. A single date. She loaded it on her laptop, breath shallow. The video began at dusk. The backyard garden, empty. Then voices entered the frame. Her father, Alexis, Margot, the three of them speaking in confident, low tones. Daniel's drone hovered, unnoticed, above the arbor. She still believes Daniel killed himself, Alexis said. She wants to believe it, Margot replied. It's cleaner that way. Her father nodded. We just need her to come quietly. No scenes. The gala will be the perfect ending. And after that, Alexis asked. The pills. She drifts off. A tragedy. No autopsy if we handle it right. Margot sipped her wine. And the foundation? Ours. Completely. Natalie sat frozen, watching her family plan her death like a retirement party. They had it all mapped out. Her fall from grace, her disappearance, the erasure of her name from everything but scandal. The file ended with Daniel's voice, clearly recorded later. If you're watching this, Nat, they kill me too. The ache that had lived in her chest for years cracked wide open. It hadn't been suicide. He'd known, and they'd made sure he never told her. She wept, finally, soundless and burning. But it didn't break her. It weaponized her. She watched the footage again, this time cataloging every second. The audio matched perfectly with the tone and mannerisms she remembered. There were timestamps in the drone's metadata, GPS coordinates that placed the device exactly where the garden had been on that night. This wasn't a hunch anymore. It was evidence. Upstairs, the guests were beginning to arrive. Laughter and crystal clinks floated down through the vents. Cameras were being positioned. Live streams prepped. Journalists rehearsed their lines. The gala was being carefully staged, not just for the family, but for the world. She didn't need to make a scene. She needed only to press play. Natalie returned to her room, methodical. She backed up the footage on 3 encrypted drives, then uploaded a mirrored version to a hidden server. She left one drive hidden in the vent, another in her coat lining, and kept the third in her purse. If they tried to intercept her, the truth would survive. If they drugged her, the truth would broadcast. She created contingencies for every scenario. The dress she chose was midnight blue, with long sleeves and a high neckline, a stark contrast to the gowns typically worn to harrow galas. It was deliberate. It was armor. Her hair was pinned in the style her mother had once praised, the one used for photo ops and debutante galas. Her heels clicked with precision on the marble floors. She smiled at the staff as she passed. Some smiled back with confusion. Others looked away. She entered the ballroom just as the final violinist tucked her bow under her arm. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across champagne glasses and shimmering gowns. Her father stood at the head of the room, preparing to speak. Alexis hovered near the donor tables, posing with ease for photos. Margot moved like a wraith between dignitaries, kissing cheeks and accepting compliments. Natalie found her place near the stage, clutch in hand. She waited. Let them see her. Let them believe they had won. Wallace Harrow stepped up to the podium. He cleared his throat, adjusted his tie, and began with rehearsed gravitas. This foundation has been the cornerstone of our family's legacy. Tonight, we celebrate not just where we came from, but where we're going. Natalie activated the app. Behind him, the projector blinked. The audience stirred, confused. The planned slideshow vanished, replaced by grainy footage. The garden, the voices, her father's, her mother's, Alexis. Natalie said nothing. She didn't need to. The room did the work for her. Gasps spread like wildfire. Several guests stood. One woman covered her mouth. A man whispered to his wife. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Even the servers froze in place, trays trembling. The video ran its full length. Every word, every plan, every lie, and then Daniel's voice. If you're watching this, Nat, they kill me too. Silence followed. Then came the sirens. Red and blue lights splashed across the glass doors. Officers entered, firm but calm. Wallace Harrow tried to intercept them, claiming a mistake, a prank, some political sabotage. Margot declared it an act of vengeance. Alexis demanded a lawyer and shouted about defamation. None of it mattered. The lead detective approached Natalie. She handed over the hard drive, then a second for backup. She gave them access to the server. Her voice remained steady. She pointed to her father, then to her mother, then Alexis. No screams, no vengeance, just names, just truth. They were led away, the crowd parting in stunned silence. Some turned away. Others stared. Someone wept quietly in a corner. Natalie stood alone at the center of it all, calm, statuesque. A woman turned to her, an older donor with trembling hands. Did you know? Natalie looked her in the eyes. Now I do. The answer wasn't a confession. It was a release. Outside, as her family was loaded into police cars, the sky darkened with rolling clouds. The scent of rain drifted in from the coast. Somewhere in the distance, thunder grumbled. She walked past the photographers, past the murmuring crowd, past the chaos. She didn't need their sympathy. She had her proof. And Daniel had finally told the truth. The dead don't lie. They wait. 6 months passed like wind over a scorched field, quick, relentless, and reshaping everything in its path. The Harrow name, once whispered in reverence across gala circuits and financial journals, now echoed in courtrooms and exposés. Trial footage dominated headlines. Tabloids dissected every archived image of Margot, Wallace, and Alexis with forensic glee. Natalie stayed silent. She refused interviews, ignored calls from networks and publishers. The story was out there, raw and bloody and unspinnable. She didn't owe it anything more. Instead, she turned inward. She bought a small house on a cliffside in Maine, overlooking a bay where fog rolled in like breath against the earth. The kind of place no one could find unless invited. In this quiet, Natalie healed in fragments. She spent her mornings walking the beach, collecting sea glass. She read through Daniel's notebooks. She played the cello again, slowly at first, then with feeling. She kept a shelf for the hard drives, each labeled in sharp ink, Truth, Daniel, inside. They sat like sentinels, not relics. Justice had been served, technically. Her parents and sister were convicted of conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder. 25 years each. No parole. Yet the weight of survival lingered in her bones. Natalie didn't celebrate. She reorganized. She launched a private initiative with a nondescript name, Wordline. Its work was simple but sacred. It took anonymous submissions from whistleblowers and survivors. It offered protection, exposure, closure. What began as a whispering inbox grew into a network of advocates, coders, legal minds, and ex-journalists. They didn't chase clicks. They chased truth. The kind that changed lives, not headlines. Sometimes, Natalie recorded short voice clips, never her face, about what she learned from Daniel, about what silence cost her. These clips traveled across encrypted forums and found their way into classrooms, courtrooms, hidden USBs. Her face faded from public memory, but her fingerprints remained everywhere that mattered. One cold March morning, a letter arrived in her mailbox, stamped from a federal correctional facility. It was from Wallace. The handwriting was weaker now. Inside, an apology. No plea for forgiveness, no self-justification. Just an acknowledgement. He admitted Daniel had confronted him the night before his death. That Margot had insisted on removing the threat. That Alexis had suggested the overdose method. He signed it only, Father. Not fit for the title. Natalie folded the letter once and burned it. That afternoon, she stood on the bluff, Daniel's final drone footage playing on her tablet. The waves churned below, wind catching her coat like a flag. She watched her family's plan unravel again, this time with detachment. Then she turned it off. She whispered, "It's over." And for the first time, she believed it. In town, no one knew who she was. She became the woman who bought rarities and always paid in cash, who tipped heavily and asked about people's dogs. In the anonymity, she found peace. In the stillness, she found the ghost of a future she hadn't dared to imagine. She was no longer Natalie Harrow, the headline. She was just Natalie. Keeper of glass, witness of ruin, survivor of design. Not every ending is revenge. Not every justice leaves scars. Sometimes, the perfect ending is simply surviving with your soul intact. A year to the day since the gala, Natalie stood at the edge of the bluff once more. The sea below was a shifting sheet of mercury, restless and unknowable. She had learned to read its moods, the way Daniel once read code in people and lies. She hadn't spoken his name aloud in weeks. But he was everywhere here, in the wind, the salt, the way she left one chair always open on the porch. In town, no one remembered the Harrow scandal. New tragedies had replaced it. The world had moved on, as it always did. But Natalie had found something the headlines never promised: continuity. Not peace, not entirely, but the quiet continuation of life. Behind her, the small house buzzed with low music and the smell of cinnamon. Guests would arrive soon, just a few. Wordline's newest contributors. People who had fled something and found something else. Survivors, not victims. A network of witnesses who spoke truth to silence. Natalie adjusted a mug on the porch table, checked the last of the passwords on her tablet, and uploaded the next batch of redacted files to the Wordline cloud. The world would never know her face. That was by design. But someone, somewhere, would be handed a USB drive by a stranger in a library. Someone would hear a voice in a podcast that didn't ask for followers. Someone would see the truth and realize they weren't alone. That was enough. She turned from the cliff and walked back toward the house, the wind at her back like a hand on her shoulder. Daniel's words echoed in her mind, not from the footage, but a memory long buried, now unearthed. You don't have to be seen to matter. You just have to be right when it counts. Natalie smiled and left the past where it belonged.